Okay. Yeah, so I was saying, yeah, but I think you already know this because I wrote that email and you responded. So far we have that Hub Zero. It is set up and it is working just fine, except that we can't have the CSS when I'm using the reverse procs.
Yeah,
There is
that's because it's assuming that it's at the root. So the same thing happens with any tool like the Wiki or Jira or anything else. If it believes it's how home is at the root, it will make all URLs to that path. So either there's a way to tell Hub Zero you're at /Hub Zero, and then it'll map all its URLs to that. Or if that functionality doesn't exist, then we have to work around it, which would be we can't serve it at ETL AMPATH ORKE. We'll have to serve it at a different virtual domain.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing the same thing. So I'll do that. I haven't done that yet because I was having some other issues. But I'll try using the virtual host. I think that is going to solve the problem. Otherwise, trying to find the setting up. I could try to find the place where they're setting up the document root.
There should be something in GitHub, because it would be really lame if they always assume that they own the root. But if that's what it is, there still may be a way for us to sort it. But ideally, the easiest thing would be that there's a configuration that tells, basically says to Hub Zero, this is where you're located, not just the IP address or the domain name, but this path.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I think Jonathan is asking for the link to that. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and try to use the virtual host. I think the idea of using, I don't know, but I don't like the idea of trying to change the root of the application. I find it very not attractive. I think we'll maybe facing a lot of problems if I try to do that because it's a bit complicated piece of software. They have so many files in it, and I just believe if we use the virtual host solution is going to solve that problem.
Yeah, virtual host will introduce other problems. I mean, the fact that we'll have to use a different domain, we'll have to come up with a different subdomain. The Nginx, the way Nginx is defined or configured will have to get a little more complicated, because now it'll have to be a combination of paths and multiple hosts. And sometimes there's problems. I know in Apache it has trouble serving using the same SSL certificate across different virtual domains. So that may be a limiting factor too, that assuming if we want any of these sites to be publicly available, we would want them to be SSL, and I'm not sure if we can do multiple virtual domains on the same server.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, that.
Hopefully we could. Hopefully we could, but the simplest thing by far would be to find the place in Hub Zero to say, here's the server.
Oh, okay.
Have it because.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Because it's not going to know.
Yeah.
I was saying that I would assume that Hub Zero would have some place to tell it where the path to the website is. So that would be by far the easiest solution. I can peek around too, see if I can find something.
Okay, thank you.
Or we could ask AC. That might be an easy thing too.
Yeah, I guess we could. Yeah, well, let me try and see where we get with this solution. if we hit a roadblock, then we can. I think we can talk to SC and see what they can come up with. But although I think one of these solutions
Yeah.
would work. Yeah, if it's not, if it is changing the root of the application or using the virtual host, I'm sure one of them should work, especially the virtual host. Anyway, the only challenge that you are pointing out is the ability to use the
virtual host may not be the best.
Yeah, so with that challenge in mind, then it becomes a bit complicated, but maybe there's a workaround. So let me just try to see where I can get with this, and then we can decide what to do next.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, Alpha, this is you, I think.
Okay. For remote entry, I looked at the code, reviewed it. I realized from the comments within the code, it seems like some of the things that we are proposing had already somehow been considered. So that was yesterday. I was looking at it, and today I went to Augustine. We were discussing it. Just I wanted at least to have an understanding of how they've been using it and what parameters they were there. He showed me a number of things. But one thing that came up was that actually in 2013, they had this solution. Jeremy created modified the remote form entry module, and it was able to process data at the locals. But there were challenges. I have put actually a link to the wiki that shows the issues that the discussion around what they were doing in 2013. Basically, from that, the last comment there seems to me that to imply that they were not able to probably create a queue, have encounters created and have the data that is supposed to be sent to the central server. So I'm looking at probably what I had thought of doing was just to create a task and then create some global properties, then have a process where this data, the XML that is generated that is normally sent to the queue is sent actually to the form entry queue, then is processed, then we have a backup. So that's what I was working on. But having seen what Jeremy had done, I have looked around and seen his code. I think I just got his code a few minutes ago. I see what he has done, so probably we could build on that and be able to address the challenges. The problem with the wiki that is there is that actually, Menja said they ran into issues. So, but he didn't explain to me what the issues were, because it has been quite some time since that was done in 2013.
Yeah, well, it seems actually, Miencha, when you read that page, I pasted a link on the chat window. So it seems like when Miencha was trying to test the solution, the modified module in one of those sites, that was, I don't remember the name of the site, but the data was going through, it was being processed perfectly, but it wasn't being saved. The files were not being archived for later processing at the central. That is the main point I captured from that wiki page. So basically, what Alpha is saying, I think you can just go ahead and try to see what went wrong with the code, because at some point maybe people thought, okay, maybe this is not the solution. That's why they did not go ahead, or maybe that's why Jeremy abandoned that and didn't try to figure out what the issue was. But without, I think it is still something that can be done. Although this also is not only the dev discussion, because it will be nice to know why exactly this was tested and then it was abandoned. Otherwise, we'll be trying to repeat the same thing, and then at the end of the day, we encounter the same problems, and then we decide to abort the mission again. So maybe this is better for tomorrow's technical call when everybody will be available. Then we can raise this issue and work through.
Yeah, and then maybe from the code seems there were to be an outbound directory. I'm not so sure whether they had created those directories, and because I think they had changed the way the data they normally upload, because Jeremy is keeping a copy of those files into the outbound directory. So I would assume maybe he was looking at the old directory that he expected these files to be in. I'm not so sure. Perhaps we need to have it tested and see.
So I think the important thing is to, if people could remember why this solution was abandoned, then that would be great. Otherwise, I think you can just go ahead and try that code on one of these test servers and see what is happening. Then you can go ahead and with a plan. So let's hope tomorrow people have an idea of what went wrong to make them change their minds about using the solution in the remote sites. Any other, maybe, is there anyone with the addition, ideas, questions regarding that? Maybe.
So, sorry, I'm struggling for context. We're talking about remote form entry?
Yeah, that's what we were discussing about.
Okay. Yeah, we had talked about, and you're talking about processing stuff locally?
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, the one unknown is how that would affect, like, if what data might be affected. If it's just encounters in patients and observations. In fact, it shouldn't even be patients and persons. It should just be encounters and observations. If those are the only thing affected, yeah, I think it's just a question of what problems that we don't know are going to arise. I would figure that the really at the point that you have the data submitted and you're writing the file, you're deciding where to write the file, that it's just a matter of writing it in two places. So I don't know why the actually implementing it would be more than 1 or 2 lines of code.
Yeah, it shouldn't be ideally. But the issue here, Bart, is actually my concern is the fact that this approach was tried in the past. They did try it. Actually, it was even deployed in one of the remote sites, but it seemed like they had some issues. Now I don't know what the issue was, but it seemed they ended up abandoning this particular approach because of those. Yeah. I assume it's because of those problems. So that's the issue there.
Yeah, unless someone documented what those issues were, then I fear we're just going to repeat history.
Yeah, that's what I didn't want to go into, trying to do something that already happened and then encounter the same issues and then decide not to go ahead with the solution, while we could just go back and see what happened and say, yeah, oh, this is the problem, or maybe how do we solve this?
Yeah, what I suggested was that since ideally making that behave that way should just be a few lines of code, that it's not a high cost for us, it's not a high risk for us to enable that feature. It's just the risk is for the sysadmin folks to figure out, does it cause havoc or does it work okay? That's the part that's risky.
Yeah. Okay, I think because the guy who did this is mentioned is still here. We can take this up tomorrow in the technical and see what he says about it. Yeah. Sawa. Okay, so the next issue is the university call, the HTML form entry training. So the good thing is bad, but it's good also. For us, it has been postponed. And we are hoping to have a session between the dev team, the FCT, tomorrow and see where we are. So I just put that agenda there to get the views from the other people who might not attend that meeting. I mean, my idea about the meeting is to go in the meeting and get one of the forms and try to look at it, both of us, the developer team and the FCT, and see what you're missing and what are we going to ask about on that call. Because otherwise, I've been worried about the situation whereby we are at the call and we are not asking things which are helpful to us. So that's why I have that agenda.
Yeah. Maybe maybe we should make a Google Doc of potential questions, because in my email to Mark, I listed out, I think, 4 or 5 things that would be questions.
Yeah, Sarah, do you have any ideas? Will you be able to attend? First of all?
I'm gonna be staffing the wards, so I'm likely I'll be on the call.
I'll be there.
Oh, okay.
The things that came up in my mind, and I sent this in an email that went to the AMPATH developers, but I can throw it in a Google Doc, were things like advanced validation, so validation across fields, we know that. How to share scripts across forms, because we don't want to have to copy and paste code over dozens of forms. Refactoring to accept concept UUID, which it sounds there by his response that feature already exists, and then refactoring labels so that they work with their widget.
They do work with the widget.
What's that?
The labels, I think they do work.
Well, the HTML forms that I saw, like the return visit,
yeah.
None of the labels were connected to the checkboxes or radio buttons.
Well, okay, so you're saying that label for attribute is not being translated into the label?
No, I'm saying that the way it's rendering labels is in a way that they're just text, and there's no connection to the checkbox or radio button. So it makes the target for someone who's trying to complete a very long form, it makes the target for their mouse like 10 times smaller, because they have to hit the checkbox or radio button. They can't hit the text, which seems like a detail and silly for us to worry about, but it could increase the efficiency twofold of someone filling in the form.
Yeah, well, because those questions are already there, that's fine. I think we'll take them up with the Mark and the other guys on Wednesday.
But yeah, but we could surely, if folks, I'm sure there's other questions we could come up with.
Yeah.
So I'll make a Google Doc and share it, and you guys can go to town.
Yeah, and hopefully tomorrow when we have that meeting, we're going to have more of the stuff that can be discussed about on that call.
Yeah, in fact, maybe there's a notes. Let's see if there's a. See if they're following the pattern. If there's an Etherpad, then maybe we can just use that. That way, notes can be taken with answers.
I'm just looking at the documentation. We could use. He's right. I didn't look at this before, but you can use concept UUIDs instead of concept.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the concept UUIDs.
Imagine that something was documented.
They documented it, but they just didn't change the name. So the concept ID can have an answer of a mapping, a concept UUID, or a new concept ID.
Oh, an answer?
Like all of these things, they kept the same concept ID as the name of the variable, but then the way that you can supply values can be any of those things. So
you can even use message properties files according to the documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
So
the best practices, they say, is to use mappings. That's what they do at PIH, so that.
Yeah, that's what they do. But I think I'm just trying to point out the kind of things you can do with the module, so it's possible. I mean, we're wondering how are we going to do the concept UUIDs, but they're already done, so it's good for us.
What is a mapping, or do we have those? I mean, I know there's that mapping attribute group.
Yeah. So there's reference terminologies like LOINC and SNOMED and so.
And LOINC, I think.
Yeah, LOINC and SNOMED. and ICD. And so those are reference terminologies that are basically just vocabularies that are standardized and shared around the world. And you can enter, you know, 0 to N mappings for any, and we also have mappings to like CL, I think. So you can, for any concept, you can say, here's the thing it's mapped to, and here's the relationship. It's the same as, or it's narrower than, or whatever, wider than. We should have a pretty significant number of those mappings, and actually using those, especially like using CL mappings, would probably be more robust, because if we want to transition to using CL, which we've said we want to do, then the forms would need to be refactored.
Okay, so that's great. So we can start doing that for our HTML forms. I know this is somewhat of an aside, but it's good to know.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
No, that's it. We'll talk about this more tomorrow during our forms call.
No, I was just thinking. Okay, well, this is maybe another discussion, but I was just thinking, if you start using mappings, it's good, yeah, when you're transitioning to CL dictionary. But what is going to happen? What's going to happen with the streamlining of forms? Because if you're going to use, I think you're using Angular, and Angular need to use the UUIDs. Well, I suppose you can get the UUIDs from the maps. But you can't have one form running in all those versions of Angular and HTML forms using the maps, can you?
I mean, you know, we may have to do something like what Burke said, which is that when people submit forms to be used, they get translated by some script that just replaces whatever needs to be.
It wouldn't be that. I mean, you should be able to use the mappings in your Angular forms as well, because.
No, but the problem is that when you're submitting a REST, when you're posting, you need to give the UUID of the concept, not the mapping. As far as unless the REST web module lets you give that.
Yeah, probably it can do.
Do we know that for sure? You can't send something by a mapping.
I mean, no, I don't know that for sure. I didn't know what the mapping really was until a few minutes ago.
Yeah. So we might want to check that, because if you can send it with the mapping, then that would be more robust.
Yeah.
Who would know should I just post to the dev?
Yeah, I think a quick post to unless it's in the documentation.
Yeah, but then you have to read it. It takes so much time.
Oh yeah, I know, all that reading.
Yeah, RTM, Jonathan. Okay, well, I guess that's fine now. We can go to the next. Oh, HTML form entry modification status update. Yeah, well.
So I'm sorry, but I've got to run. I've got another meeting that started half an hour ago that I've got to hop into.
Okay.
So, I've put the questions into the university notes for next week, and I'll share that on the AMPATH Dev list so that folks can edit those and add questions if they want.
Thank you, Mark.
And that way, during the call, hopefully folks can take notes. You know, put the answers in there so that we can see. So, all right.
Yeah.
Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye. Okay, the next thing is the HTML form entry modification status update. This is going to be more of a dev thing. Yeah, well, so far I've been able to create some very simple representation of the incoming data from the form, and I'm saving that, but I haven't been able to replay the forms, like the data from the file system. And the issue is there are so many things. The way things are done in HTML form entry, they're a bit complicated than I expected. So there are some things that I need to be very careful of that are holding me back. For example, one of the things that I encountered is in the API methods, there's this thing is called HTTP request, servlet request. instance. These things, they are usually created by the containers, like separate containers, and passed to the application. So you don't really find the concrete implementation, but they're deeply embedded in the API. So you find that in order for you to get anything from the system, like a file, the representation of the requests that was saved in the file, you need to recreate these instances. Now it's tricky because most of the implementation of the separate request instances, they've been created for testing purposes, like they're just mock-up classes. So when you try to include them in the project, the Maven doesn't like it very much because some of these classes, they're already included in the core as testing. They have the scope as test. So if you want to use them in the code that is not meant for testing, Maven complains. It creates some conflicts and it's a bit difficult to solve. Luckily, I found something that was helpful. It solved that problem, but still, what you have is the simple representation I have on the system might not be enough to recreate the environment that was available when that form was submitted. Now, the thing with the HTML forms is different from the AMPATH form. The AMPATH form comes with XML with data in it, so you can easily know which is which. Now, the thing with HTML form, it comes with it has a map of key value pairs which don't have very descriptive names. Somehow there are things like W1, W2, W3. So it's a bit challenging. Yeah, I just wanted to give everybody the status update of what's going on. I'm working very closely with Mark Goodrich. So hopefully, maybe by the end of this week, I'll be having that feature working in. Yeah, as expected. If we go past through that particular problem I'm trying to solve right now. That is the update. Any technical question for that? No technical question? Bonnie, you don't have any technical question? Okay, thank you guys. The last thing we have is I just wanted to announce to all the devs on this call that we'll be resuming scrums via the IRC. We do have scrums kind of here, but they are available. So I just thought maybe it would be great if we can resume scrums via IRC and anyone can join, such that I remember in the past Ada used to join, so she was kind of following up on stuff. So we're going to be doing that beginning from effectively immediately, which is tomorrow. So if you want to follow up with what's happening with the dev team, you can be joining the Scrum, which happens between 3:30 to 4 p.m. East African time. It's going to be very challenging for me when I go back to the US, but I hope I'll manage. Yeah, that's all. A or B? Alpha? Simon? No. Okay. Sarah?
Sounds good.
JJ? A or B? Okay. Okay, thank you guys. We have nothing much from our side. Thanks everybody for joining.
Wait, Willa, I didn't realize I was on mute. I do want to bring up something.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to discuss validation plans for now.
Okay.
For the forms, because is Alfio on the line?
He is.
Okay. I think probably the prudent thing would be if we can find some time before our 2 p.m. meeting, but for Willa, Alfio, and I to just sit down and discuss some of the JavaScript required to do the forms. So I don't want to discuss it on the call right now, but I just want to find a time. Can we meet at 1:30 to have that discussion before we have the 2 p.m. call? a file, and would that work?
I think it will be more productive to have that discussion after the meeting with the FCT.
Okay. Why? All right, that's fine.
Huh?
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, I don't know about others, but I think it will be more productive if we see what they're going through. Then we can, if you sit down and say, okay, now how are we doing this? It's easy to come up with ideas than not knowing what's going on with the form and then trying to figure out how to do it. What do you think?
Either way is fine.
Okay.
The call's at 2. Just trying to see, and then we have another technical call at 4. So as long as we can make time after that, then that would be good.
After 5, you mean?
No, just but in between the forums call and the technical call, we can discuss it. That would be good.
Okay, sure. Alpha, what do you think?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, Alpha is fine. I'm fine with that too.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.